we're very privileged now to have a top coach like Des on. Des has spent a lot of time Gaelic, so he knows his stuff about the Gaelic. He's now over at Arsenal. He's head of their academy lads. So hope just like last week, there's a few boys taking notes on anything he has to say, write it down. And then at the end, lads, we're going to have a chance for you to ask Des some questions. So don't be afraid, whatever it is you want to know, or just either put it up in the group here, or you can mention it or talk at the very end, lads. But I'm just going to hand you over to Des here now.
Lovely. Thanks all, and thanks for the invite. I'll start by sharing my screen just to make sure I have the slides up. And I think we do. Yes. So ready to go. Yeah, and the most important part is questions. I want to have plenty. I want to hear plenty from you. But to set the scene, I'm going to give you a little insight into the academy in Arsenal. I'm going to try and relate it to your situation, because you're all talented young footballers trying to make it as an inter-county player. And the young players I'm dealing with are talented young soccer players trying to make it in the Premier League. So there's many similarities, but I'll try and there's differences as well, and I'll try and link the two. So yeah, a little bit about myself. Started a long time ago in rugby. I've worked in Irish rugby for about 15 years in various roles, and have found myself over in Arsenal. I'm the head of sports medicine and athletic development. So I would manage the physios, the conditioners, the nutritionists, the doctors, all the various science and medicine people. Looking after the young. I do a bit of work in Gaelic football, and I must say that I enjoyed a lot are the minor teams. It's a great period of time for learning. So to give you an insight into Arsenal, here's the mission. So our academy, our mission is to create the most challenging and caring football academy in the world. So, sorry. Now it's just there's a bit of noise there coming through. Maybe if people could mute.
Can you mute that just to hear the noise come through there?
Yeah. Sorry, I'll just mute all, so maybe guys you watch yourself back on.
Yeah. Cool. That's perfect. Sorry, it's just hard to say when that's coming through, but now that's better. So.
Okay, guys,
unmuted.
It's yours, Sean. It's your own.
Yeah.
Can you mute yourself, Sean? It's just coming through in there behind you.
You have some lively kids there doing lots of activity, which is a good. I don't want to stop them, but yeah, if we mute, we're good. We're good for action. So yeah, our mission, what we want to do in our academy, is to create the most challenging and caring football academy in the world. So as well as challenging the young players, it's important we care for them and we help them and support them through their journey. The slide has stopped working, so I need to get back in again. Apologies. Yeah, and ideally at the end of it, we want to develop out of the academy strong young gunners. So that's young players who can cope with anything, because not all of them are going to make it. Just like your own academy, your own development squads, not all of you are going to make it to the inter-county team. So we're preparing for players that do make it, and we're preparing players if they don't make it for all eventualities. And we've got pillars. I won't go into too much detail on this, but we focus on effective team players. That's like the technical, tactical aspect of it. We focus on lifelong learners because school is important where we are. And preparing for the they don't make it is important where we are, because not all of them are going to make it to the Premier League. Champion mentality is important. That's like the psychosocial aspect of development, developing mentally. And also most efficient movers. That's the physical area. So we work on all those 4 pillars, and they all work closely together in how we develop a player. And you'll see at the bottom, we have the standards, our academy standards: respect, discipline, and humility. Now, they're really important because we truly believe that better people make better players, and we like the players to behave properly, being respectful, being humble, and being disciplined. And I was interested to hear your last presenter, a very, very good footballer from Dublin, and how he was humble was mentioned. And that's no surprise, because a lot of people who make it to the high level and last there for a long time have those standards. And that's why we're trying to drive the standard of discipline, humility, and respect. We find those really important. So the people, the population within the club, we have 2 venues. This is our venue for our younger players. It's in Northeast London. And we've got our under-9s team to our under-16s team there. So that's a lot of players. That's about 150 players. And then there's the venue in St. Albans in North London. That's where the first team is, the women's team, our under-23s, and our under-18s team. So there's about 50 players there. And so we have players for a long time. And so here's a video from 8 years ago. And we'll stop here at this young player. And so he's 12. But that player actually is Bukayo Saka, who plays for the first team. And he's been with us since he was 9. So he's been working extremely hard, making the most of the facilities, the people, himself, in developing himself. And there's many other players who went through different journeys. Now, he had a very linear, straightforward journey straight into the first team. There's other players like Ainsley who had to go on loan, who had ups and downs in his journey. And here's some more players who've been with us for a long time, like Emile Smith-Rowe now is playing with the first team, but he had a bad year with injuries. So it's not always straightforward, and it's not always straight linear up to the first team. There's ups and downs, and there's Joe there as well, Willock, and I'll show you his story in a while. And here's another player that's with us a long time now. He came when he was 16 from Spain, Hector Bellerin, and what we're trying to develop, here's a little clip of Hector, is speed. Speed is so important in the Premier League, and here's Hector using that attribute to great effect during a game. So we really have a big interest in speed and speed repeatability. So here's the academy, and like tonight, it includes the parents, and it includes all the people who support the players and all the players from under 9 up. So that's a lot of people. So we need good facilities. This was the facility in Hale End, but we've a lovely facility now for our under 9s, under 16s. Here's the facility in London Colney. Here's a little video of the gym. So it's 45 meters long, it's about 50 meters wide. There's the running track lean area. There's a football technical area. There's the racks. There's a power area. There's a sand pit. You name it. The whole lot is there. 3D. Movement analysis. And here's the players. And in terms of sports science and medicine, everyone in pink is doctors, everyone in green is nutritionists. I'm there in yellow as the head of the department, and everyone in blue is strength conditioners, and in orange is a psychologist. So we have so many people available to help these players. And there's the science and medicine team. And we also work closely with that there's a plan of them, and we're feeding into the most efficient mover part of the academy. We work very very closely with all the departments. And we've actually published how we physically develop our players in an article, rate of stage of development, maturation, age, stage in school, and we take those into consideration when we are designing the program. But a little bit more on that later. And this is an example of the number of sessions and the length of sessions we have with each player at each stage of development from under 9 up to the first team. And you can see it gradually gets greater in the number. And this is our approach. So our approach is the arrow approach to physically developing the player. We want to get the player to the next level as quickly and efficiently as possible. We focus on functional competence, that's mobility and stability first. Then we focus on movement skills, with mature level movement skills. We try to get fit through the game in the majority, and we make sure everything is planned and periodized so the player isn't doing too much or too little. So we all follow this plan from all the age groups. So from under 18 to under 23, we want the players to earn the right to get to the next level. You must master the exercises, the challenge, the activity. So we've a level 1 to a level 4. So it's about how well at level 1, not how much. And then eventually, level 2, it's about how well and how much. Okay, let's get strong. Level 3, now you're strong. It's about how well, how much, and how fast. And level 4 is the elite level. And every player goes through that journey slightly differently. And then they've got targets they have to reach in order to earn the right to progress to the next level. Similarly, at under 13 to under 16, the players have to master all these exercises in all these different movements and earn the right to move from level 1 to level 5. And at 9s to 12s, well, it's slightly different. We focus on fundamental movement skills. We focus on different sports. We focus on football movement warm-ups and basically learning how to run, learning how to move at the younger age groups. So content, let's have a look at the younger age group. And this is just a glimpse what we do with the under 9s, 10s, 11s, and 12s. So this happens in warm-ups, and we try different movements. And they're learning how to roll, how to squat, how to lunge, and they're not great because they're learning. So this is where they can stabilize those lunges. They're a bit wobbly, but they're learning. And then locomotor skills, they're learning how to run. So we work on running action, etc. Coordination drills, activating their hamstrings. And then they turn into races and relays and challenges, etc. Basic plyometrics are added in, and we have different challenges as we go through. And purposeful play as well. We do different sports, and because it's important to play at that young age, many different sports and games and activities. And enjoyment too, but it's important that the players have a bit of fun. So we bring in other sports. We do play Gaelic football, we do play basketball, we do play Aussie rules, we play badminton, we play cricket, you name it. There's an Aussie rules ball, I think. Yeah, he's got a good mark. And yes, so we try to make it enjoyable for the young players. Now, as they get older, this is under 13 to under 16. So because they've learned the movements in the previous age group, they can progress, some of them, onto more advanced exercises. Now, there's Bukayo at a very advanced exercise at 16 because we have them from under 9. But there's other players like this tall player doing a very basic exercise because he's not ready to progress yet. So they all progress at different stages. And if they're growing fast, we hold them back somewhat. But they try and master their body weight first, the technique first. These are just wooden discs on with the players. And if a player can advance, because we have them so regular, we safely help them advance. And we throw in movement challenges every so often in a session to have a bit of fun and do some challenge movements. And it's not all about the gym. In the warm-ups, it's extremely important they really focus on their running technique. And we do these activities built into the warm-up. I'm sure similar to yourselves when you're out on the pitch. And it takes a long time to develop. It takes a long time to progress. So it's important they're doing these repetitively. And at the end of the warm-up, we try and do contextual drills, running fast in a game scenario. And it's not just straight line speed, coordinate or change of direction is important. So here's some of the young lads doing their change of direction work, which might consist of plyometrics plus these change of direction runs. So they're learning how to step properly and zigzag run properly, not all about straight line running. And we do a little bit of multi-sport at these age groups as well. And they're eventually they'll specialize in football, in soccer, I should say. And of course, in these age groups, under 13 to under 16, you're growing at a very fast rate. So mobility is extremely important. Now that all that groundwork is done at the younger age groups, we can progress on to much more advanced content for our under 18s and under 23s. But still, like the player kneeling on the blue pad there could be some players doing more basic exercises because he might have joined us later, or he might be slower at mastering the exercises. So you'll see a very individual program there with the older age groups. And then when they get to under 23, there's Danny Ballard. He plays international football for Northern Ireland, and he's on loan at the moment. But yeah, these guys are pretty advanced, so they can do all sorts of strength, speed, speed, rate of force development work, and are quite athletic because they're getting ready for the adult football world. Now, if we look at biological age, so these are all players aged, say, 12 to 15. So similar to yourselves. This is an under 14 squad, and I took a photo after a tournament we went in Florida, actually, in Disneyland of all places. And after we came back, I lined them up from the tallest, Elijah there, to the smallest. And I just took a picture, basically. And then a few months later, I took another picture in the same order. Now, Elijah went off to Liverpool. He's still there. But what you'll notice is the guys in the middle have suddenly got taller than the guys on the near side. And then a few months later, the guys at the end have leveled out. These players are changing quickly, growing quickly. And then the guy that was the tallest is now the smallest, Ishmael, and he's in Burnley at the moment. And now the players that are left are passing me out in height. So that's really massive change the players are going through. And it's important for us to measure that change because these players go through so much growth over that period. And some players go through that growth spurt, we call it, early. Some players go through it later. And it's important we know and observe that. Now, we have the technology and the facilities to measure that in the players. We can measure what height they are and how tall they're going to be and how many centimeters they're growing at the moment. But your coaches, your conditioner will have a good eye that will be able to estimate if you're an early developer or late developer. And that's an important part of the program because this is the type of changes you could go through. Here's a young player just doing an overhead squat. And over the period of, it was 3 years, I have another video of the same player who's grown 23 centimeters, put on 23 kgs, and is stronger, but he's kept the same movement. He's grown and he's gone through dramatic change in height, 23 centimeters over 3 years, but he's still moving quite well, and that's the goal at the end of it. And every player will be at a different stage of development. So all these players are under 15, and this player is 95% of adult height, nearly 96. This player is 95% of adult height, 96% of adult height, pretty much. This player is only 93. He's a later developer. This player is only 92. He's a later developer. So those guys in green should be looked on slightly different to the guys in white because they're later maturers. Now, I'll have a chat amongst yourselves. Here's a little quiz question. Who is this player receiving the ball now and getting tackled and smashed? So this is a schools match. It's a different sport now, it's rugby, and it's a number 9. Now, he's small and he's getting pummeled by that that number 8. So that player is Brian O'Driscoll, and probably Ireland's greatest rugby player ever. But he didn't get picked for his under 15 team in school because he was one of those later developers. So that's why it's important to keep an eye on them. Now, this player, a little quiz on who this player is. He's receiving the ball now, and he's doing quite well. He's running through all the players there and scoring easily. Well, that's Simon Zebo, and he was an earlier developer. So there's a place for everybody, and as long as we know what stage of their journey the players are on. So as they go through that change, movement is so important. And we're lucky enough to have a machine that does 3D analysis of movement. And we can do it in the dressing rooms there and look at the players and how they move. But that's not needed. We're lucky to have that. That's a luxury. But here's a few videos of normal club players. This is from a good while ago in IRFU, in Irish Rugby. And we looked at players who didn't do athletic development. So players who aren't as lucky as you to have an athletic development program. And you can see the challenges they have with simple movements. Now, this is a player before his growth spurt, and he's really struggling with stability. Mobility, not too bad. He can get down low, but he's really struggling just holding that position. Now, here's another player in the middle of his growth spurt, and he's tightened up because he's not doing those exercises that you're doing. He's not focusing on his movement. And if there is inactivity, that's what can happen. And here's a player after his growth spurt who's tightened up even more. So this is to emphasize how lucky you are to have an athletic development program and what can happen if you don't keep moving or do athletic development. So with our own young players, is it working? Okay, can it be beneficial? Well, here's the injury numbers over the last 8 years. And because the players have bought into it, and because the players have gained in their training age, we're lucky that our injuries have come down a lot over the last 8 years because of these types of program. So similar to yourself, if you apply yourselves to your program and you also focus on good nutrition, focus on resting when you should rest, talking to your coaches on letting them know what other activities are happening, it can be very beneficial, and you can reduce the amount of injuries, and that keeps you on the pitch for longer. And here's the number of muscle injuries. We had a little blip in the middle there. There was a reason for that, but in general, over those 8 years, they came down because of the hard work of the players, the coaches, and the science and medicine people. But mainly the players buying into the program, doing it with intent, and communicating well with the coaches. Now, these are just different types of injuries. But also, so that's, if you apply yourself, you reduce the amount of injuries. If you apply yourself as well, you can increase your performance. So doing that athletic development program, this is just a 3-year look back. And these are the average improvements for players. So taking 0 to 10 speed time, in 2017, those 9 players were doing that in 1.74. And because they worked hard over 2-3 years, they got their time down to 1.66. So it's beneficial. Similar to their power, their jump was 38 centimeters, and over 2 years hard work, that increased to 44. So they're jumping higher. So just in that short period of time, they got a lot more power and they got a lot faster. So if you apply yourself to the athletic development program, you get more power, get more speed, and you reduce your chance of injury, and you're on the pitch playing more. But this is a group of under 14s, all different shapes and sizes, some early developers, some late, and that's why it's important to have the awareness of it. But they're all growing quite quickly, so the athletic development helps them get used to their new bodies pretty much. And all those under 14s in that squad, these are all the players that are playing professional football at the moment. That clip was from 8 years ago. So the story there is not everybody ended up playing professional football. There's some that didn't. And similarly with your own squad, not all of you are going to end up playing inter-county. But we do track all the players who have left us, and all of those players are still playing football and are still quite active and healthy. Now, with yourselves, if you do this athletic development program that you're on, and you will be on in the future, and you have been on in the past, that gives you more chance of being an inter-county footballer, which is a goal. But also, there's more chance you'll have a long club career and enjoy football and be able to play football for longer if you apply yourself in the athletic development program and the development squads. Now, here's just some of the players who's become professional footballers with ourselves and other clubs from the academy since 2013. So there's a lot of different players in a lot of different clubs. So a lot of them are successful, yes, but there's some players who aren't playing professional football. But one of them works in the city and he's quite successful there. One of them's a personal trainer and is doing really well at that and is still active and healthy. And there's 3 players currently still looking for a club, and it's touch and go how it'll go for them. So it's important we look after all the players, just like all of you in the squad. Some will make it at the intercounty, some won't, but some of you will have some very good club careers with your own club. And here's an example of a journey with Joe Willock. So he's in the centre here in the purple t-shirt, and he's learning his exercise. So it can be frustrating for young players doing the exercises. You can't do them as well as your buddy, and you're progressing a bit slower than you'd want to. Just like Joe here, he's struggling with that exercise. He's fallen all over the place. And that's when he was aged 14. Here he is at 17, 3 years later, and he's at a very high level doing some very advanced strength training because he stuck at it and he kept going and he gradually improved and he's got to a very high level. And he got to play for the first team as a teenager. And currently, he played for them quite a lot and is on loan. Now, it's not just about strength training, though. It's also about speed and running technique. So here's Hector Bellerin, and he's a captain of the team at times. And here's a video. Again, no need to unmute yourselves, but have a look at this video and chat to yourself or chat to your parent. What do you think is bad? What does Hector need to work on? So this is 8 years ago. I might play it a couple of times. He's doing the simple 0 to 10 test that you probably do yourselves. And that's his running technique. Now, he got quite a good time. But what does he need to improve on? So I'll pause and I'll go through the things the third time I play it. Yes, so that's what we had to work on. So like your conditioner, we do tests, we figure out what's best to put in the program to help the player. So for this player, the arms are going side to side. So he has energy links. He's not pushing straight forward and pushing straight behind with his legs. His knees are even crossing over a little bit. So they're energy leaks and they're not as efficient as they could be. It'd be better for him to push straight forward. So what we like to see is that coming out on the pitch once we've made the intervention. So here's Hector in the bottom corner. Have a look at his running technique now, and it's much more symmetrical, as we call it, much more athletic, and that helped him get even quicker. And he now is a senior player in the club, and he's very supportive of the younger players to encourage them to stay at the work, buy into it, really put the effort in. And he says, I worked a lot on my speed and power with the conditioning coaches last year. This is something which has helped him a lot. So he encourages the young players, and that helps with the development of all the players. So we're trying to create the most challenging and caring football academy in the world. We've got our pillars of working on effective team players, champion mentality, most efficient movers, and lifelong learners. One of our big things is better people make better players, and our academy standards of discipline, humility, respect. So I show this clip, and it's not a nice clip now. There's the fitness coach, or the conditioner. He's talking to Patrick Evra, so he's the captain. And there's the coach of the team. So things should never go to this level. things should never end in arguments like this. That's not good for a high performance environment. It's a pity this happened, but it was quite a stressful World Cup, I think, back in 2010. And obviously they didn't get on. Obviously it blew up into an argument like this. But what we say, never let that happen. It's always good to talk, and it's a mature thing to do for a player. If you have a question or you're not happy about something, there's the fitness coach throwing away his whistle. You know it's all over when he does that. So yeah, it's ideally we don't want it to get to this stage, because better people make better players, and better people wouldn't have those types of arguments or those frustrations or arguments like that. So I think we'll get the best value by chatting. So there's an overview, and of course I can expand on that. But what I'd really like is if there was many questions from yourselves, so we could have a good chat about it.
That's brilliant, Des. Very good. Definitely. I don't know about anybody else here, but I've written down about 10 questions. So hopefully, lads, any sort of question, boys, unmute yourselves and don't be afraid to ask Des. So he's here for. So I'll maybe get things started. One, those you were showing the video there of the young, sorry, it was Seka, where he was 9 years of age and then he moved it all the way through. Was there anything, any quality within that you've seen in him that you are fit to identify now straight away that these are the guys that's going to make it? These are the guys going to make it through the first team.
Yeah, and we do have a psychosocial department, and we do psychological profiling for many reasons. One, to understand the player better, and also that the player understands us. And two, that we can help the player develop if there are certain psychological skills like self-regulation, reflecting on the session, asking the coach for help. Those good skills is what we want to develop. But also we can see, okay, what traits, as you say, are common when a player develops. Now, it isn't a set rule that if you have these traits, you get to the first team. There are players with different traits, and there are players with other traits that get to the first team. But the trend we did see is linked to our standards. So discipline, humility, and respect. And that's why we've put them at such an importance in our academy. So the likes of all those players I showed that did make it, they were quite mannerly. So their discipline was and respect was good. They were quite diligent at their work. Now, another thing, they were quite challenging. They had many tough questions for the coaches, the conditioners, the physios, because they really wanted to make it to the next level. So I'm not saying the player has to be the perfect pupil in school and do everything right and be no trouble. Yeah, you should have discipline and humility and respect, but challenge the coach, ask questions why you're doing it. What can I do to get better? So that's the sort of traits we saw in these players and are continuing to see in the players that have gone through. And they were tough to coach because they always wanted more, they always wanted to do more, they always wanted to see what extra they could do. And sometimes we gave them extra, but sometimes we had to hold them back, and they had to realize you couldn't keep doing extras and keep doing more because you'd end up breaking. So yeah, discipline, humility, respect is what we saw in the young players that came through.
There's a thing there, I definitely took on definitely the way the injuries definitely dropped, and like the improvements there over the power was brilliant. Like I know we do counter movement jump, or we do stand broad jump, our own test there, and massive improvements. What is it that, like, what key thing would you say really contributes to making a player better? What would be the main thing you could tell the lads that you really need to work on? So is it the mobility, the strength, the power? They all obviously play a role together, but what would your key thing?
Yeah, first of all, is in relation to the injuries going down. At the back 8 years ago, there wasn't the same amount of people helping the players. There certainly wasn't the same facilities. So the club did invest in people like yourself, in people like Sean, and the facilities. Now, with that and the application of the players, that helps reduce the number of injuries, that help keep the players on the pitch, that help keep the players developing. So you can always, it's so important for teams to have, like what you have, development squads and support around the players. So that helps. But once that's in place, yeah, speed is king. And in soccer anyway, and I think in Gaelic football, and speed repeatability. But you need the foundation to become fast. So our players, you saw in our arrow approach, we focus on mobility, stability, and we focus on movement skills. So you gotta have the mobility to get into a good sprint position. So if you haven't got that mobility, you won't be able to get into a good sprint position. So technique is what we highlight at the start. And if you do a good grounding, like the age groups we have here, and you master the technique and you master the running technique, then you can do the more advanced exercises, like the advanced strength training and the resisted speed training. But you shouldn't rush onto those, and you shouldn't do those without the foundation. So the key to it is having that solid foundation. But it can be frustration because it takes time to increase mobility. It takes time to master a technique of an exercise. But once you do, that propels you on to higher levels of speed, power, and speed repeatability. So yeah, we really focus on those things in order to get the fast players that we're looking for at the 18, 19, 20 age group.
Is there any questions on there, Sean? Is there, just to let some of the lads get a few in?
When you sat there, please can hear. For the boys, if they have any questions, I think you can raise a hand, or if you want to come off mute, or any of the coaches or parents that have any questions, they could maybe ask. I suppose what I'd ask is maybe just a couple of things, maybe those relatable to our players now. You know, if there was anything that's maybe advice you could give them during this period of lockdown, maybe something that maybe your players are doing, or something that could, I suppose, help them, you know, through this period, because apart from maybe the schoolwork and that, I think it's massively important to keep healthy and active, just for, you know, health and well-being. If nothing else, take sport away from it, just be healthy and active. Sorry, you know.
For sure, and we're doing a lot of work because our players from under 15 down are in a very similar position to yourself. So literally, I had a mindfulness and yoga session with our under 12s this morning at 10, and at 5 o'clock I had an athletic development session with our under 13s. So we're lucky. We provide them with supervised sessions, so they've got athletic development, they've got mindfulness yoga, they've got performance analysis, and in the weekend when there's light, they do their skills work. But I've no doubt you have programs that you're doing and you have to do at home. So to help you through this period, the advice we give our players from a nutrition point of view is we are less active. There's less sessions. The sessions aren't as long. You're not traveling to the sessions. You're sitting down because of school on laptops, and you're going to have to eat that little bit less. Now, you can still eat plenty, and there's 3 meals, but we've to really talk to our players about being cautious of snacking. And the fridge is just there, and you can go get the wrong things and eat a bit too much, and eat a bit too much of the wrong thing, and eat a bit too much too often, I should say, because of the boredom of being at home and missing out on that. So plenty of fruit, of course, plenty of colour on your plate when you do have your main meals, with variation in colour and healthy food. But be conscious of not eating too much, and not eating. We do have to eat less in this lockdown period because we're less active, and be conscious of your snacking and what you're eating. So that's from a nutrition point of view. From a well-being point of view, routine is so important, and try and stick to the routine, especially Monday to Friday, getting up at the same time, doing your exercises, having your shower, your quality breakfast, doing your schoolwork. Maybe you have skills you can be doing after your school, not staying up too late on tablets and electrical devices, having good quality sleep and good quality routine helps. Otherwise, you can get into a bad routine and down a bad road and staying up too late, um, etc. Then activity. So yeah, we are sitting down a lot, and we advise our players, and I hope your teachers are okay with this, that every hour there's a little break, a power break, where you're stretching, where you're moving, where you're going outside, getting fresh air, and stretching and coming back in. Otherwise, we're sitting down looking at the screen for far too many hours. Um, and I do see that the GA has launched a classroom break movement guidance on their website, which I thought was really good on their part. So there's the nutrition, there is the activity, there is the sleep, and there's the routine. And we also, it's a tough time during lockdown because we're not with people we know and our friends and our family and our loved ones. So it can be quite stressful and people can be quite anxious. So we spend a lot of time talking about mental health and well-being, and we hugely encourage the players to talk to their friends, talk to their family, talk to their coaches if they're finding any way life a bit tough. And we even did a video with all the players on tips for their teammates in lockdown, and it was based around doing the things you like, talking to your friends when you need to, routine, healthy eating, activity, and they can help us in this challenging time of lockdown. So there's lots that can be done, but the lucky thing for your players is they've a program, athletic development, and they can do that and have something to look forward to through the week. And that being active is so beneficial, as well as the sports performance, but just being healthy.
Brilliant, Des. I just one last question. I see there's a couple of questions come in here now. I suppose with this there's a swing down the GA this last 10 years in terms of athletic development, and maybe from your own experience coming into the likes of Arsenal, I don't know whether athletic development or strength and conditioning was massively important, but maybe how was it difficult initially, and how maybe did you change that mindset or think about a culture of the benefits of athletic development, just with clubs maybe getting into it now? How can maybe they change maybe the mindset towards it?
Oh yeah, good point. Um, you're dead right, and I think we've time. I've got a few slides that I might share just on that, and I'll definitely oh, I mightn't be able to share just yet. Yeah, I'll just talk through it. So
Okay.
yeah, there are concerns out there in the community of soccer when I arrived, mainly with maybe parents and coaches that didn't fully understand it, because it's not new, but it's relatively new. And they're wondering, is athletic development right for young people? And the answer categorically is yes, it's hugely important. You're with a competent strength and conditioner that's well qualified, like Owen and all the conditioners in Arsenal. They're UKCA accredited, they've done their degrees, qualifications, and that's the key to it. Now, if you have someone who isn't, yeah, that could be inappropriate, that could be dangerous. So it's about having the qualified people. And then if we look at the research, so there's been a huge amount of research on this in terms of the benefits to children and adolescents. So the benefits are reduction in injury. The benefits are you become more powerful, stronger. The benefits are to your sport, and your motor skills and your sport specific skills are hugely beneficial. And there's also evidence to show about well-being and your psychosocial well-being. So there's a huge amount of evidence. You've got the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association that has published a position statement, the UK Strength and Conditioning Association, the British Sports and Exercise Science Association, and you've got the National Strength and Conditioning Association. So it's not just one study, it's hundreds of studies to show if it's done properly, it's safe, it's beneficial for your body, it's beneficial for your mind, and yeah, it's of benefit. But yes, there are people that haven't seen it before, that don't know about it, and it's up to people like myself and yourselves to share that information, to put minds at ease, and to show that actually the fantastic benefits that come from doing these exercises. And no, they don't slow you down, and no, they don't stunt your growth. And sadly, those myths appeared in the, I don't know, 70s, 80s. I think you can see from the fitness results and the videos I've shown there, it makes you faster, and none of the players are small or stunted or anything like that. So very safe.
Thanks very much. I just got a question here from Stephen. What way do Arsenal balance competition winning versus development as the players progress through the ranks?
Great question. Yes, love it, and very important. So you might be surprised to know that there is actually no competitive leagues in Premier League under 16 down. Yeah, friendlies and organised matches, yeah, but no competitions. We've no All England or whatever it may be under 16 championship. So yeah, we might enter a tournament on the weekend for under 16s and under 14s. There is one cup competition, but it's not taken too seriously. Now, when you step up to under 18s, there is a league and there's FAU Cup, a pretty big tournament. It's like the All Ireland Minor Championship. And then you step up to under 23s. Yeah, that's a competitive league under 23. But that helps us because we're able to play players in different positions from 9s all the way up. We're able to play players who may be late developers and may need to be minded, and they can play either down at a different age group, or if they're an early maturing player, they can play up at a different age group. And we actually can organize our own matches against the opposition where it's based on maturation and not on age group. So yes, there is tournaments and weekend competitions, but there's no competitive leagues that are followed. So there's no league tables. We scored 10 more than them or etc. So sorry, to answer your question properly, that's the structure. At foundation, under 9s to under 12s, no, it's fun, it's experiences, nobody's labelled with a position on the pitch, and it's about learning. Then under 12s to under 14, very similar at under 12. Once it gets to under 13, under 14, yeah, we play some tournaments, and they've got to learn what it's like to be dropped and deselected. There's starting to figure out their positions, but they're still moved out and played in different positions. But they're starting to focus in on either a central position or a defensive position or a wing position or a front position, but still not the exact number and the exact position on the pitch. Then you go to 15s, 16s, yeah, and they're starting to figure out what position is their best position. But at times we challenge them by playing them in different positions. And then at under 18s, it's pretty specialized. They don't play other sports. They're pretty solid in what position they're in. But even then, when they go on loan or they go up to the first team, our last few players, Bukayo had to play in about 3 different positions, so he had to be ready for that. Ainsley went on loan and came back to the first team and played in 2 different positions to his preferred position. So yeah, there's a de-emphasis on competition from 9s to 13s. Then there's an introductory to it at 14, 15. And then at 16, 18, 23s, it gets more serious for sure.
Brilliant. Thanks, Des. There was just one other from one of our young players. He just wants to know, from your perspective, what separates an elite athlete from just a good athlete?
Good question. Yes. Yeah, and I'm going to go back onto discipline, humility, respect. I'm going to go back on They're challenging. They're always looking for a way to improve. They're always looking for extra they can do. And yeah, mannerly. And they appreciate the coaches they're working with. And they do that because they want to get more out of the coach and more help to be the best they can be. So, but then if I be more analytical, yeah, a trend for us is the players that make it to the higher level are very quick and very athletic. But there's always exceptions. And that doesn't mean you have to be quick to play in an All-Ireland final. No, there's other players who weren't our quickest players, but they still have very, very good professional careers. But a trend is speed attributes. A trend is good leadership skills and you don't have to be a verbal leader. You could be leading by doing on the pitch, and discipline, humility, respect is the trends we see, and the differentiates from good to an elite player. And commitment. I suppose if I focus on where you are, the players at the moment that I'm talking to, that's a real make or break period. And some of your friends in the squad, some of your friends at school may not be where you were because commitment. Yeah, they were a bit more interested in having fun with their buddies downtown or whatever. And similarly, this group, some of you will be committed and will apply themselves very well to the program to get to the next level, and some may decide not to be as committed, and that can differentiate a good player from an elite player. So yeah, commitment definitely a GR age group.
That's brilliant, Des. I think it's similar to even what Dean was saying last week, so even at that elite level, even with Dublin and Arsenal, it seems to see them with the same qualities you're looking for within your elite player. Sorry, Des, there is one last one that's been through here. Des, how did the communication chain work in Arsenal from senior team through to development squad and vice versa? Is there much communication between you?
Yeah, for sure. And if I go back to Arsene Wenger, he's obviously well known and well respected coach. He had huge interest in the Arsenal way. So he actually came down regularly to our under 9s to under 16s, which is a different venue. And he was a very, very busy man, but he still wanted to instill the Arsenal way into the young players. And then at the other venue, and this is the very same as Mikel Arteta, who's there at the moment, every day they're training. They take at least 2 or as much as a whole squad of players over to train with the first team. Now that's for their benefit. They need opposition, but also he's an eye on certain players and he wants to see how they're developing. He has a very close relationship with the coaches at under 18s, 23s, because he wants to develop the players in the Arsenal way, and the young players get exposure to the first team. And Mikel Arteta, Arsene Wenger before him, they tell the under 18 and under 23 coaches the players need to be able to do this, 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 this. And Arsenal is a very technical style of play, a possession-based play. They like to play up between the thirds, be comfortable on the ball. And these are the sort of things Mikel Arteta, Arsene Wenger are telling the coaches at under 18, under 23. So they've got to be able to master the activities, the games, the drills that they do at the first team level. And they've got to be ready for the increasing pace that happens when it gets up there. But at least our coaches know what they're getting to preparing for, so it can give them a better chance of being able there. But there's a very close link because they're on the same training ground, and every day there's 2 to 11 training regularly with the first team. And thankfully that helps players progress, because there may be less players progressing, say at the Chelseas in the past and Man Cities in the past, but maybe I'm biased. But in fairness to Arsene Wenger, he was the type of coach to give a young player opportunity, and similar with Mikel Arteta. In fairness to Man United, they do have a good production line with their academy, and they're known as well for giving the young players an opportunity, in fairness.
No, again, thanks very much for that, Des. I think
Was I
Yeah,
one
tough.
question there,
That's
Sean?
right,
I
Casey.
sorry, jump in there. Sorry, Des. I suppose our young players, there's a lot of demands on them at the moment between obviously lockdown aside, but school, playing different sports, maybe dual players, hurling, football, social, and as I say, exams and all the rest. But what kind of advice would you have, or I suppose, offer towards coaches and parents just to try and, I suppose, providing that support for these young lads that are in that high demand environment?
Yeah, that's tough going, because you've got to balance the education, with different sports, with being a developing inter-county player or developing onto an elite player. So communication is the key, and we go through this as well because we've players in school and scholarship, and they have to play for their school. So why would we play the player on a Saturday if he already had a school match on the Friday? So that's up to us to chat to the school, know the schedule, and balance it out. So we chat to the school, okay, this week he plays at school, next week he plays with Arsenal, and we rotate. But there isn't too many schools matches, thankfully, from our point of view. And also there's ownership in the player to learn how to communicate as well, to tell the coach, hey coach, next week I've got this commitment, this commitment, this commitment. What should we do? And the both of them come up with a plan, and the player becomes aware he's got to manage his workload. Hey coach, I've got these exams next week. Is it okay if I train at home instead of coming to train with the club? And being vocal and managing themselves and taking ownership is a mature thing to do on their part. But education is super important. And in my rugby days working with the Irish schools, we followed their results, their exam results. We compared their exam results with the national average. So what we found every year without fail, that the players who played with the Irish schools rugby team, which is a big commitment, got much higher results than the national average. And there's other studies to show this. But being involved in a development squad can actually be helpful for your studies, as long as you communicate and balance the program by not doing too much with too many sports and not missing out on your homework and your education. And there's sometimes you, your parents, your coach are all going to have to chat, and something's got to be reduced. But most people have good common sense and know what is the most appropriate thing to take out of the program to make sure it keeps the balance.
Thanks for that, Lisa. Thanks again, Des. There's no further questions here, unless Owen has any more there, but that information was first class, Des. We really, from Fermanagh, we really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to talk to our players, parents, and coaches. You couldn't but take away a load of nuggets there tonight, and I think it'll stand our young players in good stead going forward in the future.
Thanks. I was delighted to be asked, and I admire what you're doing. It's a very important thing to do to provide young players with development squads. So delighted to be asked. Thanks very much.
No problem. Unless Owen, do you want to say a final word there?
No, just relay back to what Sean says there. The top class of someone like Des on here. I think all the lads here should be taken away exactly. There's a lot of messages raining through. I hope the lads are starting to see what it what it takes to compete at the top. The likes of what Des was telling us about the guys that's making it into the first team, and sort of similar to what Dean Rock was chatting about last week. So, and there's a big thing there stood out for me. One of the things, I'm not going to insult him, but I can't pronounce his name. He's playing for Arsenal there, and he's certainly captained a few of the teams there. I was reading down through his thing, and one of the things that stuck out to me was, he improved his speed in the dark when nobody else seen him. That's massive for you boys, especially at the minute. So what are you boys doing when you aren't training with your coaches? You're going to have to be very, very self-motivated. And you'll see what Des is talking about there. The boys that made the top is the boys that was self-motivated, the boys that's working hard on their own. So again, just brilliant stuff there, Nate. Des, thanks very much for coming on and doing that.
So thank you.
That's it, lads. So we'll be in touch, boys. Me and Sean will send you out probably when the next Zoom is. And sure, look after yourselves. And if there's any problems, I mean, text me or text Sean, boys, get in touch with us.